Hey, welcome to Taylor's Trick Taking Table. I'm Taylor and woo, go Abs. It is the last video in Community, which was just a wonderful, wonderful month, a long month. I think it lasted a little over 2 real months, whatever those are. But I think it's just a sign that trick taking is so amazing and huge and thriving and flourishing and thesaurus word for flourishing. It might be just the circles I'm in and my bias, but I feel like trick taking is kind of just blowing up right now, which is so much fun. And it was also nice to hear a lot from y'all. I feel like sometimes I'm just talking to a camera, but it was nice to find out more about your favorite games and art and all the things that make trick taking so much fun. So now that Community's over, we are going to be doing Standard Deck June, or Dune. And I'm at fault a lot of times for covering, you know, Japanese games that have a print run of like 3 or like 80-year-old games that are impossible to find. So I thought it'd be fun to just do a month on Standard Deck games. So, you know, easy to find a Standard Deck, possibly, hopefully, around you, and mock up these games and give them a whirl. The first game we're going to be covering is Dickory by the amazing Hannibal S. and Sean Ross of Haggis fame. And in fact, today, when this releases, is his birthday. So welcome to the channel, birthday Sean! Oh, yeah, that's a better hat. Perfect. And, you know, Sean is so great. He's Canadian, so I guess Feliz cumpleaños a ti. And it's interesting because he's turning 37 today. 37 in dog years. That's right. This is a Trick Central roast of Sean Ross.
The Comedy Central roast of just
Sean Ross. That's right. Welcome to the roast. I am your roast master general Trick, and Sean, welcome. He is an amazing designer. Get that out of the way before we go down the rabbit hole of jokes here. I want to say first and foremost that Sean is actually 50. He's not 37 in dog years. And I know that because I think he made a blood pact to make a game every year he's alive. That's right, this man is very prolific. He is someone who has exploded as of late in making games. And one was interesting, if you want to know a little bit about him, you can go to his geek list that shows his top favorite games. His favorite games of all time. I'll include that in the description. But let me give you a little taste. In his top 10 favorite games of all time, one of them is The Crew Mission Deep Sea. That's right, the sequel to The Crew. We love that one game. In addition to The Crew, in his top 10 are 10 of his own games. That's right, so not only is he humble, he's great at math. But you can't fault the guy. He makes amazing games. And you might be saying, okay, sample size, maybe let's broaden it out. What are in his top 20? Well, his top 20 have 14 of his own games. Okay. And Scooby-Doo Escape from Haunted Mansion. I mean, it's a good game. It's a good game, but it just shows that Sean is an enigma, a mystery machine unto himself. But reeling it back again, his games are very good. He has Cheesehead. He is a Cheesehead. He's actually been working with Domino's lately. Not the brand, which, Domino's is like Tim Hortons for pizza. You gotta translate for the guy. And, what? Cut. Oh, reel it back. Okay, my producers are telling me I'm being a little bit mean. And in all honesty, he's actually an amazing designer who has done so much for not just trick taking and this whole community, but like specifically climbing shedding games, which I don't think get highlighted enough. I think so many of his games range from ooh la la to awooga, hamana hamana hamana, which, you know, if you speak noises are great. Like there's an amazing designer. So jokes aside, Sean is amazing. And I mean, I don't know if we're pals anymore, but since I do know Sean, take it with a grain of salt. A grain of salt. Anyway, getting back to a little bit of Community, I did promise Hameln Cave, and I mean, Sean doesn't need any more gifts. What? Oh, okay. So we're gonna give Sean's birthday gift of Hameln Cave to Smoke Jaguar. Smoke, if that is your real name, reach out, I'll send that your way. But without further ado, we can quit this bit. The game we're talking about today is Dickory as in hickory dickory dock, something about a mouse and something about a clock. The hook is, it's a game with shifting rank values, if that makes sense. So like, instead of 1 being low and 12 being high, the ranks can shift. So it can shift maybe like down, and 6 could be high, all the way down to 7 being the lowest, right? Ooh, I hope this is making sense. I'll probably include a graphic to make this a little clearer. But in addition to that, there's like a queue of cards that players can take from to bolster their hand. But again, this is a climbing, shedding game. So you're trying to get rid of cards. So it's super fascinating. The cards are shifting in value. You're grabbing cards. It's a 2-player only game. So it's like a back and forth fight. Really, really great. I'm gonna go to the table and show you how to play. And then after, we're gonna do final thoughts in my bathroom as I cut my hair. I mean, it's a shedding game. Might as well shed some hair. People are saying I'm looking like Claude every day. So I'm gonna do final thoughts while cutting my hair, but it'll all work out. I have a bit planned, so the cutting the hair is gonna tie in. It'll make sense. So okay, let's go to the table. The deck in Dickory is a standard deck of cards with kings removed. In Dickory, you don't care about the suits. All that matters is the rank on the card, and effectively, it's like a clock from 1 up to 12. In this case, jacks are 11s, and queens are 12s, and then aces are 1s. And generally, although this can change during the game, the ranking is from low to high, with aces low all the way up to queens. Here we have the game set up for the only 2 players, so each player is going to get dealt 11 cards each. You're going to flip 6 cards face up into the center of the table. That's known as the queue, and then the rest are going to go face down as a draw pile. You're going to look also at the rightmost card of the queue, and this is going to determine the strongest card for the current situation. So as you can see up here, we have Dickory on their clock, and also a slider down here just to help out with this example. You're going to move Dickory to the rightmost number, so the 3. And in this current situation, 3 is now the strongest. Of course, there's ways to change the rightmost card of the queue, but we'll go into examples of that later. And just to clarify, that means 3 is now the strongest card, so 3 beats every other card in the game, including, the queen or a 4 or whatever it may be. But moving on to the gameplay, the non-dealer is the first to lead. Let's say it's this Tommy Wiseau watch. So they will lead to the start with a valid meld. And valid melds in this game are either a single, double, triple, or quadruple card of the same number. And finally, you could also lead a 3-card run, and again, suits don't matter. So looking at Tommy's hand here, they could play a single 2, they could play 2 2s, they could play 3 2s, right? They have these 3 2s here. Or again, valid runs are okay. So they have a 3, a 4, and a 2. Looking at the 3 here, they know that 2s are actually pretty strong right now because the only thing that beats a 2 is a 3 in the game. So maybe they lead 3 2s. After the lead meld's been played, the next player has one of 3 options. 1, they can beat this meld. So since 3 is the strongest, they could play 3 3s. Let's look at their hand right now. They probably don't have 3 3s. Yeah, they don't have 3 3s. So they can't just beat that meld. So what else can they do? Well, they could just pass, and that would refill the queue, and we can go into that later. Or what they can do is take cards from the queue and then beat the previous meld. So let's look again at this mouse's hand. They see that they actually have 3 7s. So looking at these 7s in the current situation, they are actually super weak compared to those 2s. Again, since 3 is the strongest and 2 is the second strongest, the 7s would lose. But if you look at the queue here, if they take this 3 and this queen, the 8 would be the rightmost card. And doing so, if we just do that now, so now that 8 is the strongest and 7 is the second strongest, these 7s can now beat the current meld, which is what the player is going to do. One thing to note, when you take cards from the queue, you have to be able to play and beat the current meld. You can't just take cards in your hand and then it going to the next player. One thing that helps though is you don't have to use the cards that you take in what you then use to beat the previous meld. So again, in this perfect example, this player took the queen and the 3, but they didn't use it for their set of 3. That beat the 2s. So then the same 3 actions go to this player. They can beat those 7s, which they could if they had 3 8s, which they probably do not, nope. Or they could pass if they wanted to, or they can again take some cards here to then try to beat those 7s. Let's say they just want to pass, because you can optionally pass or you could be forced to pass. But so how passing works is you first discard the lead meld, and then you discard the rightmost card in the queue. So we'll take those over here into the discard pile, and then you're going to slide the queue to the right, and you're going to refill it with cards from the draw pile. And this is the only way the queue gets refilled. So again, it's 6 cards. There we go. So now the ace is the rightmost card. So we're going to reset Dickory over here. And after the cue's refilled and you've reset the ranking, whoever played the last meld would lead. So that would be this player over here. One thing to note is if there is only 1 card left in the queue when you do the pass action, you don't discard this card. You would just slide it and then add 5. So that's the one kind of caveat with passing. So play like this continues until one player is out of cards and then they win. And that's how to play Dickory. So that was Dickory. And again, like I said, I'm going to shed some of this hair. But first I wanted to say, take everything I say with a grain of salt. I know Sean, so everything I say, you know, might just be too nice. I'm a little bit biased, but let's go and start. Without further ado, cutting some hair. What's funny is in college, I would have someone close their eyes. I would grab scissors. I, cut like a chunk of hair, and then they would have to open their eyes and find out where on my head, that I cut my hair from. It's a classic bit, I just have kind of like voluminous hair, and it landed every time. People love that trick. But, so, Dickory, I love this game. I feel like there's something to seeing the cue and trying to plan based on just those 6 cards, right? It's not a huge amount of information that you're going off of, but you can really see what is up ahead and whether you want to be the one to hurry up and grab that or wait to see what your opponent does. There's so many times in this game where I've wanted a card that my opponent just grabs before me. So it's one of those things where you almost wonder, should you grab early to kind of mitigate that going to your opponent, or do you wait a little bit? What I love about the action of removing from the queue, but then also having that shift the rank, is that sometimes the cards you remove could be perfectly positioned to be strong right after you remove them, right? But then sometimes someone could just remove right after you, and the cards you just took are super weak. I love that in this game, the strongest card isn't always the strongest card, so what you take can be situationally horrible. The game does a really good job of balancing both strategy and tactics. What strategy I really enjoy is how you're planning your hand, right? You're maybe grouping cards together, maybe you're looking at possible future runs, but also the tactics of that card queue. The fact that at a whim, it could just change the strength of your hand is something that you do have to balance, right? The tactics, you have to jump on your toes for that, but there's a strategy to it. Especially the fact that the last card never gets discarded, right? So you can always plan on that holding over to the next cue, and you can plan your hand based around that. There's something Sean actually said to me that made me think about climbing shedding games in a really interesting light. He said you always want to time the pace of when you gain control of the lead in the game, and essentially try to time it to when you want to shut out. And this game has a fascinating flow where, since you're bolstering your hand and shedding your hand and kind of going back and forth, and since your cards aren't guaranteed to be strong at any given time, you have a general hard time, I feel like, or a lovingly difficult time of trying to time that final shutout in this game. So the interesting thing is then how do you look at Dickory in that lens, right? How do you see a game where you don't know if you're going to keep the strong cards, right? You don't know if that queen you have is going to be the strongest. So how do you plan for that? Well, I've noticed there's a fun arc of trying to get, pairs or runs as you go, and then when to time playing that perfect thing that you've built. It's almost Scout-ish, right? In Scout, you're trying to build your hand and know the right time to pounce. In this game, that cue is kind of informing you, hey, maybe you should pounce right now. I was talking also to Sean about the idea of perfect information in games, especially perfect information in a 2-player game. And what I think Dickory does so well is that at the start, it's not, perfect information much at all. There's a huge draw deck and you don't quite know what's in the game. But as you play, and that draw deck gets smaller, and you notice what your opponent is picking up, it becomes very interesting in terms of trackable information. And I've had great moments where I've just watched what my opponent picked up and played off of that, right? Made sure, oh wow, they're going for they just picked up, you know, 2 aces or something. They probably have a big ace thing. So then making sure that every time I leave a rightmost card, I make sure that aces are super, super weak. I love that little detail. I love, it's almost like claim in a way where, you know, you're seeing what goes into your opponent's hand. Especially at 2 players, it's really impressive to bank off that information and make sure they never have a really strong hand. Alrighty, final results here. As you can tell, I was trying to give myself a rat tail. Huh? Huh? Well, it looks more like a mullet, but anyway, happy birthday, Sean. What a bad gift, but the best I can do, just for you. Anyway, final thoughts on Dickory. I think it's an amazing game. I can't give it the seal because I know Sean and I don't want to feel any bias, but essentially things I love about it. 1, standard deck game. You can go out and play it right now. Yes, you. Yes, right now. 2, I think it balances strategy and luck extremely, in luck. Tactics, well, I guess in luck too, extremely well. The fact that it's a shedding game where you bolster your hand is something I personally love. And the fact that the shifting alliances means you never know if your hand is good or not, so you're kind of interestingly balancing more melds than strengths, if that makes sense. I tried to convey that while I was cutting my hair, but it was a little bit woo. I think the premise that in most climbing shedding games, the fact that you want to hold on to stronger cards, and that is kind of the gist, and you're trying to play out low and then win it back with high right before you go out, right? That's kind of the general flow of most climbing shedding games because it is like a climbing game. But the fact that the climbing ranks shift mean you don't know what's good, you don't know what's strong, you don't know which card's strong or not, and you have to time that, right? So it's interesting because the hand manipulation is more about timing the game state and not timing your own hand. And the fact that, like I was saying, was maybe a strong hand is a bunch of the same number or like a run, right? So it removes that luck from the game because the game can just bounce around in so many different ways. And I love the strategy of it where you're playing off of what your opponent grabs, you're playing off of that last card in the queue. I found a lot because it's the only thing that carries over, only guaranteed thing that carries over between the 2 queues. And man, that end game in this is so good. The fact that it builds toward perfect information, it builds toward what you're card counting with your opponent. Oh, I'm gushing. I really, really like this game. I want to just finally say, great job, Sean and Hannibal, and happy birthday, Sean, and thanks so much for watching. I'll try to rock this as long as I don't get fired. Thanks so much for watching.